Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to many of you who are joining this program. We have been doing it now for quite some time. Thank you very much, those of you who are joining us. As I said, this program, we are doing it primarily for public education purposes. We want to enlighten our people, ensure that they are informed of the things that are happening in our country. I know this year has started in a very terrible way for the South Sudanese people. Just before the new year, and as an harbinger of what was to come, on the 31st of December, the community of BA experienced a great tragedy. The deputy chief administrator was assassinated. This is a result of a conflict that has been going on between the Abyei community and the Twitch Mayadit community of South Sudan. These are communities that have lived side by side for a very long time. And this war is happening primarily because the government is fueling it. We know this is a policy of the government of South Sudan. It has been happening for many, many, many years. They arm communities to divert attention away from their failures and why they are unable to deliver to the people of South Sudan. And then a few days ago, in Jonglei State, the Duke County was attacked and a lot of people were killed. This was orchestrated by militias from the Pibor administrative area, the Murle youth. And as many of you know, and I've been talking about this all the time during this series, the Murle youth have been armed by the government for many, many years. This project started with Yao Yao, and after the elections of 2010, and Yao Yao was supported primarily by Juba. And it was a deliberate decision to destabilize Jonglei State to ensure that the people in those areas, primarily in the Greater Bor area, as well as in Greater Akobo and Greater Panjak, do not experience any kind of stability. This was a deliberate decision by the government, and it continues to be a deliberate decision by the government. And as I mentioned to you many, many, many times, when people of Jonglei were mourning during one of the incidents many years ago at the house of Deng Dao, President Kiir himself showed up, and then he told the Dingabor community that they should arm themselves and fight the Murle. He also made the same thing clear a few years ago after the committee that was headed by Vice President James Waniga was unable to resolve the tensions. He told them, if you fight again, then you people, you fight, make sure that you fight, and if any one of you is defeated, then you can come to Juba and I will protect you. But then don't say again you are men. So if you put everything together, and by the way, he did the same thing for the Upper Nile community. When the Dinka, when the Chuluk community and the Nuer were fighting, he pretty much said the same thing, that there is nothing the government could do, and that the security forces that he have in the country are primarily there to protect him. That is a point that he has made clear. And I want to state this very, very clearly. When you live in a country like South Sudan, where the government has no intention whatsoever of protecting the citizens, where the government security forces do not think that it is the responsibility to protect lives and the property of citizens, then you as a citizen in that country have two things to do. First, you can simply choose to run away. You can go to refugee camps, stay there. If the situation has become tough, you can leave your land to be taken over by the enemies. You can just move away to refugee camps, stay there, wait, I don't know, 40, 50 years, 100 years, and then see when you come back if you still have that land. That is one option that you can do, because obviously the government have no interest in protecting the citizen, and the government is arming communities so that they can fight each other, especially in the case of Jonglei, where this has been a persistent issue for the last 19 years of Kiir government. Every single week, every single month, every single 3 months, people are mourning. And they are mourning because the government is arming the militias so that they can destabilize the civilian life, so that they can prevent any kind of stability to emerge, so that people do not farm, so that people do not conduct their economic activities. So you as a people, you have two choices, as I said. One option is You go to refugee camps, there's a lot of people already in the refugee camps. You can sit there, hide there, wait. Obviously, as we know, this crisis is not going to end. Kiir has no intention of leaving power. So you can go there, hang out in the refugee camp, stay for 50, 60 years, 100 years. Then your great grandchildren may eventually return, if possible, to the country. That is one option. The second option, when you live a country that is lawless like that, you have to stand up for yourself. You as a people, as a community, you need to think about how are you going to resolve this problem. If you live in a tough neighborhood, you have to be tough. Otherwise, you are not going to make it. You will be annihilated and you will cease to exist as a people. Your culture will cease to exist. Your civilization will cease to exist. This is the reality. This is not just only for the Dinka Boer people. This is really for pretty much all the communities in South Sudan. If you have a government that is not interested whatsoever in protecting your life. So that responsibility, when the government is no longer doing that, and that is, by the way, the primary purpose of the government. That is the only primary purpose of the government, is to protect the people. So if the government is not doing that, and in the case of Jonglei, is disarming certain communities, and completely not disarming other communities or arming them, like the case of Murule, which we have been talking about for many years, arming them, then you have a choice to make. As I said, one option, go to refugee camps. You can go to Uganda, to Ethiopia, to Kenya, wherever, Sudan. Go and stay there, hang out, stay for 50, 100 years. And then, if you are lucky, your grandchildren may eventually return. If you are not lucky, they may end up being citizens of those countries and will have no interest whatsoever in going back to their ancestral land. That is one option. Second option, you yourself have to do the work that the government is not doing. And you have not to care whatsoever what the government think anymore, because the government doesn't care about you. So it's the primary responsibility of any human being that is alive is to protect their security. You cannot achieve anything in this world if you are dead. If you are dead, you're dead. You're gone. You can only achieve something if you are alive. And to be alive, especially in a tough neighborhood, you have to become tougher. You have to think about how you're going to arm yourself. You're going to think about how you're going to defend yourself. You're going to think about how you're going to consolidate your unity. Your unity. And this is why all this nonsense that you people have been engaging with over the last several years must stop. It must stop. Otherwise, your communities, as you know it, will cease to exist. You have to see clearly what is the intention of this regime. And if you don't see it, it is basically to turn the people of South Sudan against each other. And that is a deliberate policy because it makes it easy for them to then loot the resources, to claim that how can they do development when there is all this fighting? And then they use that as a way of increasing the budget for the security, which of course, as you all know it, is extremely corrupt, is opaque. There is no way whatsoever that you can even know what the security budget is used for. You saw when the president moved around, when he went to visit the tomb of his second wife, Achola Philip, the weapon that you saw with him moving, many of us didn't even think that those weapons exist in South Sudan. And why are they not deployed to protect the lives of the people? So that people can move in freedom, so that people can actually farm, they can raise the animal, and they can live side by side in peace. Because that is not the intention. The intention of all the security services in the country is to protect Salva Kiir. And you people must get this into your head. You have to stop listening to your so-called elders. Yeah? Your so-called elders are going to destroy you as a people. You have to rise up, and you have to begin to listening with your head, right? Your head. You gotta listen. This thing has to get into your head. It's not about going to see Kuala Manyang. You want to go and see Denga Dao. You want to go and see Thorn Lake, Makuin Luet. What are they going to do for you? These are people that have decided long ago that the only purpose they will serve is to be loyal to Kiir. They will wait in the line If there is some money to be distributed, they want to get their share for themselves and their families. The community can go to hell. So you people, especially those of you in the diaspora, you have to rise up. There's a song, one of the hymns of our hymn. It say, "Yenga bedung pinda to chiwok epier buku beluo." Who is going to remain in our land, in our country, if we are not able to grow? So if you're engaging with all these divisive politics, and this is what you will continue to do, you will cease to exist as a people. And by the way, this is for all the communities in South Sudan. You saw it, what is happening. People, Murle community fighting with Anyuak community. You see it the same thing in Werab community. Each community fighting with another community. And why is this happening across the country? Because this is the deliberate policy of the government. So you as South Sudanese people, either you are going to stand up and defend yourself and find your own way of making your own peace. And that peace, by the way, you cannot do peace on a bended knee, begging. Peace can only come when all of you, you and your enemy, all want peace. That is the only way. Peace cannot happen if it is only one side that wants it. Peace can only happen if both sides want it. So every time you talk about peace, and you are being killed, you have to first defend yourself. So consolidate yourself, consolidate your unity, and see where the problem is. You have been fighting the tail of the snake. The head of the snake is in Juba. This is for all the South Sudanese people. Whether you are the Agwa community that is fighting Kuc community, or whether you are the Abiy community that is fighting Twitch Mayadit community, whether you are the Apuk community that is fighting Marial Wow community, whether you are the Dinka fighting Nuer, whether you are the Dinka Boer fighting with the Murle, you are only fighting the tail of the snake. The head of the snake is in Juba. You have to get that in your head. And you cannot come to the head of the snake to ask for peace when the intention is to ensure that your life is a living hell. So my people, time to listen and time to act. There is nothing that united people cannot do. People that are united can never be defeated. And it's not about size, numbers. Look at what is happening in Rwanda. Majority are the Hutus, 90% of the population. Who's running the country? Tutsis. Why? How? They were not elected, but they took over. Why? They were organized, united, and they had a purpose. So it's a time to rise up, to grow up. All the communities in South Sudan, you must rise up, and especially those of you in diaspora. It's time to stop the nonsense. Let's focus on real issues that affect us, that affect our country. This is a country that was liberated with the blood of the martyrs. 2 million people died. 2 million people died. And you have one individual that is intended on destroying everything that we fought for, so that the sacrifices of our people comes to nothing. Are we going to just allow that to happen? We continue watching, running around, oh, peace, oh, send, oh. There was not even a statement when the Abiy Deputy Chief Administrator was killed. There was no statement. When the minister in Abiy was killed, there's no statement. When the fighting happened between Ngok and Twitch Mayadit and a lot of people were killed, no statement from the government. And the same thing every time when there is all this problem in Jonglei, do you hear any statement from Juba? And this Murle is coming with the latest weapon. Galilee, Amigos. And these are, by the way, if you look, these are weapons that are used by the national security and the presidential guards. Does an apple fall down far away from the tree? My people, it's time to wise up. Forget what your so-called leaders tell you. Forget about it. It's time to decide two things. Either go to refugee camps, stay there, for 50 years, because this is not going to end without anybody confronting the situation, or solve the problem. Cut the head of the snake off. That is the only way peace will come to this country. That is the only way security will be in this country. You will not have peace or security or stability or development in South Sudan with Salva Kiir in charge. So let me just stop there. But that is a very important point, and I hope you people are listening. Forget what is fun. You listen to all these destructive shows about division, how you divide yourself. Forget that. Many of you now, you are in your 50s, 60s, and you are still engaging in childish nonsense. And the country is being destroyed. And this is a country that orphaned many of you. Your parents died. Huh? You are shouldering heavy burdens because of this nation. And you want to engage in childish nonsense? This is what makes you fun? People are dancing every weekend, launching uniform. What is this going to do for you? You are dancing all the time. Uniform, new song. You are praising the latest corrupt guy who has received a contract. That is what you are doing all the time. Do you think by doing that, anything will change in your life? Those of you in diaspora, you send money because you have been praised. How long are you going to be doing it? You want to be a boss over people that are disempowered. What for? Why not help empower your people? Why not empower them? Power them in the mind, power them through action, so that they can defend themselves, so that they can have real freedom. People who are cowards can never be free. So you are told, oh, they will kill us. Who will not die, my people? Who will not die in this world? Everyone will die. And you have to get that in your head. Even few people. Look at Israel. Very tiny country. It lives in a very tough neighborhood. They have to be tough. And they have to act with toughness when necessary. So it's the same thing, you, my people. You have to think properly, and you have to act. So thank you. I know there are many of you watching. Please share this video. The topic we are going to talk about today is how we end up with the kind of national security service that we have in the country today. A national security service that has turned against the people of South Sudan. When you see what is happening with the national security service, first of all, they have the so-called unknown gunmen. They go around in Juba killing people. If you criticize the government, you are killed. If you do anything that the government does not want, you are killed. You as a people, you know very well this is not a national security service that is interested in protecting you. If you are lucky and they don't kill you, they pick you up and they take you to the Blue House and they kill you. Or you are detained there, you come out, you are blind, you have organ issues, you have a kidney failures, you have a liver failures. You have a national security that shut down newspapers. There's no single newspaper in the country that is published that is not censored by the National Security Service. You have a National Security Service that is arming communities and militias so that they can finish each other. National Security Service that is actually interested in creating insecurity. How did we end up with such National Security Service? This is what I want to talk about today. You remember when we got our independence, a day before we got our independence, the parliament went through the draft of the constitution. This was the so-called interim constitution of Southern Sudan that was promulgated in 2005. This was updated, and then it was prepared to be ready as the so-called transitional constitution of South Sudan. It was adopted on the 8th. Then on the 9th, we proclaimed our independence. We all went to John Garang Mausoleum, dancing, cheering, so happy. And we deserved to be happy that day because it was the culmination of a long struggle, a long journey to free this country. And after all the dancing has stopped, President Kiir returned to J1, to the presidential palace, and he issued a decree. The first decree that he issued was the appointment of Thomas Dworth-Gwet as the Director General of the General Intelligence Bureau. and for the appointment of Brigadier General Akol Koor Kuc as the Director General of the Internal Security Service. That day, the first day of independence, the first hours of independence was when Salva Kiir himself violated the law, violated the constitution of South Sudan. Why? If you go to Article 160 of the Constitution, you read from there, you will find that this National Security Service, yes, it's supposed to have two Director Generals, the one for ISB, the one for GIB, and yes, they're supposed to be appointed by the President. But what happened, really? How are they supposed to be appointed? Well, they're supposed to be recommended by the minister in charge. And who is the minister in charge? The Minister of National Security. So what happened that day, day of independence? Was there a Minister of National Security that somehow recommended Akol Koor and Thomas Dworth to be appointed Director Generals? No. So that was the first violation. So President Kiir, instead of first appointing the minister, working with the minister then to recommend who is to be appointed as Director Generals, he went ahead, appointed the Director Generals by himself. And then now the Director General immediately, they start working. They work for like a month. After a month, then now he appointed the minister, Jororwei Dengajak, the first Minister of National Security Service of South Sudan. At the time, I was at the World Bank. I was the country economist for the World Bank. Jororwei, I had worked with him when he was the Minister of Investment, and he was when he was the Minister of Regional Cooperation. So he invited me and said, I want a different approach to how we should design security, because part of the problem that led to the war in Sudan was how the northern regimes, especially the regime of Jafar Nimeri, used security services to suppress the people, to prevent people from having a genuine dialogue. If you remember back then, there was so-called Sudan Security Organization, SSO, that used to do exactly the same thing that the National Security Service is doing right now. So he wanted a different approach, a different way in which we can think about security, a different way in which we can define what is security even. And that was my job, to come with a civilian view of security. So I was invited as an advisor to join his office. And I gladly joined, because security is the beginning of everything. When security institutions are used to suppress the people, it leads the country on a wrong track. That country is going to have all kinds of chaos, because people who are supposed to speak up and help the government to understand what is wrong in the country, what is wrong with its policies, will be prevented from doing so, or they will be punished if they do so. So you have to create an environment that can allow security institutions to be focused on key issues and not necessarily to be regime security services. So I gladly joined. But when we joined, we found that Akol Koor and Thomas Dworth has been working for almost a month. And they had established structures. And they are there in their own head. The minister was just in a position for accommodation. It didn't really have any powers. And although, really, the minister is supposed to be the policy maker, and they, as directors general, they're only supposed to implement the policy that the minister makes. But in their mind, because they were appointed directly by the president, they felt that they could disrespect the minister. So when minister came in, he formed a committee of 15 people, 5 from the ISB, 5 from GIB, and 5 from his office. A lot of people were in this committee, including my good friend who was recently accused of coup, Christothon, was there. Paul Nang, who is now in the military, who is heading the operations of the SSPDF, he was there. Those of Bodo Philip, who became governor of Eastern Lake State during the 32 state, was in the committee. A lot of people were there. So this was the committee, and we started working. The first thing we had to do was to come up with a new doctrine of the security service. What is the philosophy of the new security institutions that are being established? And that requires, by the way, defining what is security. And this is where really the problem began. Within our committees, people were coming with their own mindset that has been set by their bosses, by the two directors general who have been working now for a month. But at least we had a deliberative process. And through this process, we were able to convince many of them to understand really what are we talking about. And by the way, much of the work has been laid already before we come. Before even the constitution was passed, Dr. Majang Agot, who had been the Deputy Director General of NIS in Sudan, he had initiated the process for establishing a strong intelligence services in South Sudan. And he had formed a committee that has gone around Africa. They have gone to South Africa, they have gone to Ethiopia, they've gone to Kenya, they've gone to Uganda to compare different models and different ways in which a strong intelligence services could be established. And they had prepared a very solid document. And that document was for the establishment of what they called then the National Intelligence and Security Agency, NISA. It was a very comprehensive document. So we start with that document, and that document had pretty much everything that we needed to do. And it had defined the security in a way that we really wanted. It wasn't about a regime security. It wasn't about state security. These are choices, by the way, that different security organization makes in the world. You could simply choose to be devoted to protecting a particular regime. You could also choose to protect the state. Or you could choose, and this is what was essentially the point of Dr. Majak in that document, human security, protecting your population, your people, right? Defining security in wider perspective, so that it's not simply about physical security, but it's also about economic security, health security, environmental security, defining security in a comprehensive way, essentially creating a condition that can allow human life to prosper in a particular territory. So that is what we built on, and we built a white paper. And this white paper focused primarily on how we have to avoid the mistakes that happen in Sudan. Right? The focus was to build security institutions that are theirs to protection of human rights, that also help to advance democracy in the country, that exclusively focus on the gathering, analysis, evaluation of intelligence, and advice to relevant institutions that will carry out certain function. There was supposed to be no ability whatsoever of this security institution to arrest people. They were not supposed to have heavy weapons, and they were not supposed to be militarized, because proper intelligence services are not just militarized. They are comprehensive. Because you need all kinds of different intelligence. It's about access to information, getting that intelligence. It's about having analysts that you can get from all different elements of life. That was what we focus on. Now, when we did all of this, and then also we look at the structures. What was the proper structures? Akol Koor has formed structures where he's the boss. There was a deputy under him. And then there were like 11 different directors reporting to him. Anyone that has studied public administration knows that this is not how you run a well-functioning administration. It's built like a pyramid. You can't have 10 people reporting to you, you know. So we had to review the structures, and we had to create a way in which, instead of having two accounting institutions, because what was happening, Thomas Duarte was going to Ministry of Finance to get his own budget. Akol Koor was going to the Ministry of Finance, get his own budget. Each one is spending here, each one is spending there, and it's supposed to be one institution, and there is no single accounting officer. So now we came in and we said, no, there has to be an accounting officer because this is one institution, National Security Service. There have to be one accounting officer in which all the resources, all the budgets are prepared, and then now these resources will be dispersed to the two different units. When we had a meeting of the senior staff. It was attended by all the different senior staff. Thomas Duarte was there. His deputy, who was Rin Twen Mabur, the current governor of Lake State, was there. Jorawiyai chaired the meeting. Akol Koor was there. His deputy, Mothik, was there. All the different directors were there. The meeting was a chaos. The amount of disrespect that was shown to Jorawiyai that day was something that was simply unbelievable. Akol Koor was extremely arrogant. It's like, what is this structures? What is it for? You know, I was shocked. And I ended up saying something that day. And I said, my people, I come from a civilian side. I had no idea that this is how you do things. But basically, my assumption was that to be an intelligence agency, it requires one to be intelligent. Yeah? Can you imagine? You have an institution that is dedicated to intelligence, but run by people that lack basic intelligence. That did not go very well, by the way. And this is where some of my problems that will later come, this is where they started. In any case, the meeting ended up in chaos. And what was even interesting at the time, Akol Koor was going to the president himself. In fact, he had more access to the president than Jorawiyai, who was supposed to be the minister. And the same thing with Thomas Duart. So they managed completely to dismantle everything. Jorawiyai tried through different ways, through the national security policy process. None of this worked. And by 2012, you know what happened? They began acting on their own. I think directly with the orders of the President Kiir, assassinating individuals. Isaiah Abraham became the first victim. Many people that are now singing psychopathic songs with the regime, some of them will not be alive without our efforts to save them because they were on the hit list. You know, many activists, many people that were critics, many journalists that were supposed to be killed. That's simply what happened. The rest of the story, you know it very well. President Kiir at the time, you also know, after the independence, SPLM had sent all these people to the states to go and thank the population for voting for the referendum. But when they met with the people, people were very angry with them. They told them the way the SPLM has run the government during the interim period was dishonorable, and we as a people, we don't accept that way, and we expect to see a change. That, by the way, generated a lot of shockwave. So President Kiir all of a sudden realized that he had no support within the SPLM, he had no support within the National Liberation Council, he had no support within the Political Bureau. So the only way he could be supported was to remain in power through the security service. And that's how basically National Security Service, instead of focusing on human security, became focused on regime security, protecting Salva Kiir and entrenching his rule in power. To do that, you don't care about the nation. To do that, you don't care about the delineation of roles, because there are different roles that different security institutions play in the country. The military has a role. They're supposed to defend the territory from any external aggression. Police is supposed to enforce law and order within the country to make sure that there is a rule of law. And the national security is supposed to collect intelligence, analyze it, evaluate it, and then advise relevant authorities with it. So what happened here? National security became a paramilitary organization. They start buying tanks. They start buying all kinds of heavy weapons, anti-aircraft, anti-tanks. It turned itself into a militia. And they also began assuming the role of the police, basically arresting people, taking people to the Blue House. In fact, among the first people that was arrested was a gentleman from Werrap State called Dengdit Ayok. Dengdit Ayok had written an article criticizing President Kiir for allowing his daughter to be married by a foreigner, Ethiopian guy. The title of the article was called Nyanabeng, the daughter of the president. He was arrested immediately, put in the Blue House. In fact, I was the only one that was able to get him out. You know? So because of President Kiir's unpopularity within the SPLM and his desperation, because he realized that there's no way you can hold on to the SPLM, he began now to personalize the security agencies. Not just only the National Security Service that was personalized, the army. This is how he began recruiting Matiang Anyor from mostly from Greater Barghazal, especially from northern Barghazal state and from Werrap. And they were trained in Wunyik by Paul Malongawan. They ended up later on playing a critical role in the start of the conflict in 2013. So that's what happened, my people. President Kiir, because of his thirst for power, his lust for power, power that is not using to protect the lives of the South Sudanese people, power that is not using for development of South Sudanese, power that is not using to protect the territorial integrity of South Sudan. As you've seen, he has given away the land of South Sudan to Kenya, to Uganda, to all these countries. Power that is only interested in using to loot the country, like the way that he has bought himself mansions in Morocco, in Dubai, in Ethiopia, in Nairobi. Power that is only interested in essentially selling everything, all the resources of the country, the oil sold in advance, water sold to Egypt. Power that is interested in dividing the people of South Sudan and enslaving them. People now go and they kneel before him. They kiss his feet. That is the only way that you are a good boy. If you speak with a voice, real voice, then you are seen as a threat and you are dealt with. Either you are killed or you are arrested or you are forced into exile. That is the power that he wants. So because of lust for that power, he recreated the system of Khartoum, the law that ended up being passed. This is not the law that we drafted. The law that we drafted is fundamentally different. But the law that ended up being passed was the same law that the SPLM rejected in 2010, that the niece of Sudan wanted to pass, that the Mutamar Watani wanted to pass. We rejected that law in 2010, only to adopt it in 2014. And by the way, from 2011 to 2014, national security was operating without law. They were killing people without law. They were arresting people without law. They were doing all kinds of nonsense without law. So Akol Koor here now became a tool that Salva Kiir used to suppress the people. And that is basically how essentially we end up with the current National Security Service. It was because Salva Kiir is power hungry. Is he not power hungry? What is he using this power for? To steal resources of the nation for himself and his family. Adud is the one that is collecting taxes of South Sudan. All the goods that are coming in through the borders of South Sudan is the company of Adud Salva Kiir that collect the taxes, and then she decide how much she will keep in her bank account and whatever little that she gives to the government. That is the purpose of why Salva Kiir is so interested to be in power, is to enrich himself, to enrich his family, and to enslave the people of South Sudan. So my people, we cannot continue like this. He's using this power now to divide you, to arm this community today. Tomorrow, he's armed that community. Then you kill each other. And then he claims there is no way he can do development when all the people are fighting. There is no way you can do election with all the people that are fighting. There is no way you can do anything because the people are fighting. That became a convenient excuse. And that is why even now, all of you in the security service, you are without your salaries. You say, oh, he's our leader. If you're from a One Chan, you think he's from your leader. Well, ask Deng Deng. Deng Deng was in a prison with me. He was put there so that he can spy on me. Then he died. And when he died, they could not even bury him for 3 days. His body was left with us there for 3 days until it almost rotten. That is the Awanachan government. You say it's our government from Barghazal. Ask those of Lualakon who were with me in the Blue House. He was taken out at night, taken to Luri, cut to pieces. His body was sprayed with gas, banned. You say, oh, it's our Dinka government. Ask those of Isaiah Abraham, those of Dr. Ding, Chol Dan Ding, who were simply killed because these people, either because they were critics or either they knew some of the diseases, some of the sickness that are with Salva Kiir. So you cannot say our government. This government is only for Salva Kiir and his cronies, primarily his family and some of the network around him, so that he can loot your resources so that he can divide you. You cannot say, this is our government. This is not our government. This government is worse than the government that we had in North Sudan. It's worse than Bashir. It's worse than Jaffar Nimeri government. Because at least those government, they knew they had a bit of pretense that they had law. Here, There is no even a law. The first day of independence was when Salva Kiir broke the law. That's when he basically rendered the constitution of South Sudan useless. So my people, the only way to take this country forward, we have to get rid of Salva Kiir. Whether you are a soldier, you have a role to play. Your gun is a tool that can be used instead of suppressing the people of South Sudan, can be used to actually free them. If you are a journalist, instead of writing psychopathy, your pen can be used as a tool to liberate the people of South Sudan. If you are a priest or a man of God, instead of praying, God protect our leader that is destroying the country, you can pray so that God can do something about such an evil leader so that people of South Sudan may see freedom. If you are a politician, instead of kissing the ass of President Kiir, the way that many of our elders are doing, so-called elders are doing, you have to speak the truth. Help the people to liberate themselves. If you are in the diaspora and you work and you have money, use your money to help your people. There is no government there to protect them. You have to protect yourself. And you have to think about how are you going to stay alive and remain tall, standing tall in your land. That is your responsibility. It's a time to forget childish behaviors. This year is the year we are removing Salva Kiir. May God Almighty bless you. May all of you have a great Sunday, and I look forward to seeing you the next time. This is the year Salva Kiir must be removed.